Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with the first video of the year, the first proper video of the year. I know that I've uploaded the video about sort of my uh, personal and professional issues with my sort of work situation, but that was a video that was filmed in December and then I posted it in January because I took several days to think it over whether or not I was actually going to post it. So I consider this video to be the first video of the new year, right? Recorded in the new year, posted in the new year, right? So I went over this video, this article, I should say, by Bounding into Comics, and the reason I'm covering it is because I actually do think Bounding sort of um, misunderstands Vita, in my opinion, up until the very end. This is actually one of the few articles where I'm like, you know what? I can actually see where the comic creator is coming from, and then at the end she sticks her foot in her mouth, or they stick their foot in their mouth. I'm just gonna try to refer to Vita as Vita because I honestly don't know which pronouns Vita uses anymore. Because when I look at Vita, I see a woman, but I've also heard that Vita uses they them. So I'm just gonna just go with Vita. Vita is their name or her name or whatever. But if I slip up, just please keep that in mind. And another reason I'm uh, covering this article is because Vita's tweets in the article touch upon advertising, right? And sort of focus targeted advertisement towards certain demographics, right? And that actually is something I have a bit of experience with in my professional work because part of what my office does is that we work with the HR department to conduct job searches. And so part of what we look into is the advertising and where the focus demographics wise the advertising should go. Right? So I actually do have, in my own way, a bit of knowledge and experience on the advertising process, at least when it comes to the university system. Right? So this is one of those things where I actually understood what Vita was trying to do, and I actually don't have an issue with what she was trying to do up until the very end. So let's go through the article and I'll try to explain what I mean. All right, so it says here, it says here, uh, DC Comics writer Vita Ayala, who is currently writing Nubia and the Amazons, Wonder Woman, and Batman Urban Legends, exposed. It says her here, so I'm just reading what it says. Her bigotry when she declared that no cis dudes should apply for an associate editor position at Marvel. One second. Sorry, that was one of those, NYC alert type things that we get from time to time. Right, but continuing, it says Ayala's comments came in response to former Marvel.com writer Angelique Roche sharing a link to an associate editor position for Marvel.com. The job description, which has now been removed from Disney's website, stated Marvel Entertainment is seeking a pop culture expert to join Marvel Digital Media in the role of an associate editor. Responsible for the creation and curation of content on Marvel.com, the associate editor must be an expert in the Marvel Universe with deep knowledge of Marvel characters across comic books, video games, and more, in addition to the larger universe of fandom, the description concluded. Now, actually, another part of my job, or what we do in my office, as regard to job searches, is that we will review the language of a job description. So, looking at this, like my professional brain sort of activates, and it's like, how in the world do you even quantify such a thing, right? Knowledge of uh, the Marvel universe, right? How do you put that on a resume. It's not like there's any uh, college courses, right, where you take classes or major in the history of comic books or the history of Marvel or anything like that. So I'm just wondering, like, when you're evaluating a resume, like, how do you evaluate, how do you quantify objectively this element of knowledge of the Marvel universe? Or if you were to craft interview questions, how do you ask this? so so do you give them a quiz? Do you quiz them on, like, obscure media, obscure knowledge? I don't know. Though I do wish they had this sort of expectation or demand from their comic writers, but that's a story for another day. So, right, and this shows a part of it here, right? So, it says here, the former New Mutants and Champions writer at Marvel Comics responded to Roche saying, sorry, tweeting, black and brown people, especially femme people, please apply. Now, in my opinion, both in my professional and personal opinion, there's nothing wrong with this tweet. There's nothing wrong with her encouraging a certain demographic of people to apply. That's how I understand and take this. At least this tweet on its own, to me, is just her reaching out, advertising this position to a certain demographic group. There's nothing wrong with that. We do that in my work all the time. We reach out to Asians, blacks, whites, veterans, Italians, all different types of people. We advertise in all different types of ways because, like anything else, right, when you have a company or whatnot, right, and whether people want to admit, I can tell you that in universities and in the business world, your demographics matter, right? Your demographics matter. We may not like this, may not want to acknowledge it, but it does. And you will get questions on, how many people of this demographic or that demographic are in this position or that position or work in this department or that department, right? I've been working with this type of stuff for about a decade now. So from where I can tell, she didn't do anything wrong here. She advertised an open position. Excuse me. That was a work related call. But, as I was saying, basically, long story short, she's just doing targeted advertising in this particular tweet. There's nothing wrong with that. Plenty of businesses do that. They do focus targeted advertising toward certain demographics to hopefully improve their numbers, their standing in those demographics. In particular, if it's a demographic that they historically lack, or if there's been any sort of, like, public outcry or concern about their lack of a certain demographic or lack of diversity, companies will do this. So, this tweet in and of itself, nothing wrong with it, in my personal opinion and experience. Right? So, it says here, in a follow up tweet, Ayala wrote, the fact that people are angry that I tweeted that black and brown people should apply and call it racism is funny and sad at the same time. I hope they figure themselves out sometime soon because they're only telling on themselves with that nonsense. And here's, in my opinion, where Vita sort of steps into it. This is not the type of tweet I would have advised to put out because of criticism of who she's sort of reaching out to, right? You know that comic fans are very, um, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess just very sensitive, perhaps too sensitive at times, to this type of thing. Not without reason, I would say. I think that if you've watched any of my content, you'll be very well aware of the reasons, right? But while again, I don't think reaching out to a particular demographic is wrong, and I don't think Vita sort of doing her part and saying, "Hey, people of black, brown, femme people, here's this job, apply," is wrong. I will say two things. One, that's not the way I would have pitched it if I were her. I would have focused more on the qualifications, right? Do you have a strong love and knowledge of the Marvel universe and all that? I would have made it more, I wouldn't say vague, but I guess I wouldn't have brought race into it personally if it were me. And I would have based it more on just the qualifications and the merits. And with this tweet, in my opinion, it's a ill thought out tweet because while I can certainly understand and understand Vita being upset about people sort of coming at her, this type of response does not quell the flames, right? It doesn't settle the restless natives down, if that makes any sense. Right? That's sort of poking the bear. And while I'm certainly not above poking bears, I do feel in this case that it doesn't help here, right? So I do think, in my personal opinion, that this tweet, while perhaps understandable from a certain point of view, is ultimately ill advised. You don't help your cause, you don't help your case with this type of tweet, right? This doesn't help people understand what you were attempting to do with the previous tweet. I think if you had just said, hey, this is a great opportunity. I want to present this opportunity and inform people who are, historically underrepresented. I want to let them know that, you know, they are invited, they can apply too. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to exclude others. Like, if I were Vita, that's the way I would have said it. Hey, I'm just trying to bring in more of this group. That doesn't mean that I'm saying people from other groups can't come in, right? So I do think that Vita, steps in it here and sort of, prods the hornet's nest, which is not a good thing to do, in my opinion. So I don't disagree with her reaching out to a demographic, but I do disagree with her response to the criticism here. This doesn't help, in my personal opinion. Then it says here, however, Ayala would make her bigotry and prejudice against cis dudes clear in a separate tweet when she wrote, "Black and brown people, queer people, people that are not cis dudes, any combo of the above. If you are even a little curious about being an associate editor for Marvel, click through, apply, you are needed." Now, this is where I sort of shift back to her side. I don't think, and I don't interpret this tweet necessarily in and of itself of being anti-cis men. While I do think it's poorly worded, I do think it's poorly worded. I don't think that she was saying cis men need not apply. I think, given the overall tone of her previous tweets listed here, that what she was saying was people who are not cis men. Right? Literally what she says, people that are not cis men. So she's not saying cis men don't apply, at least not in this tweet. She wasn't saying cis men not apply. She was saying, hey, everybody's sort of outside of that demographic, right? And again, she's specifically focusing on queer people, femme people, black and brown people. She's saying, hey, apply. Again, while I don't necessarily agree with the wording, again, there's nothing wrong in and of itself with targeting a particular group, especially, I shouldn't say targeting because it makes it sound bad. Focused advertisement of a particular demographic or demographics, right? Especially if there is a noted lack, let's say, um, in your company. Nothing wrong with trying to improve your numbers. Again, I probably wouldn't have written these tweets the way Vita did, but again, with the exception of the one that I just covered, where she's sort of responding to the criticism from fans, the other two tweets where she's actually reaching out to the queer, brown, femme community, I don't think um, were inherently wrong. Let's say I don't have an issue with those. I have an issue with the way she responded to the criticism. So again, not not the world's best written tweet, but I understand what she was trying to do, and I don't have a problem with it. And then it says, in a moment of sheer irony, Ayala then accused her critics of bigotry while doubling down on her own. She tweeted, "Bigots loathe the." Jesus Christ. Ah, interruptions galore today. Right, I'm gonna cover this part again. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. So it says, in a moment of sheer irony, Ayala then accused her critiques of bigotry. While doubling down on her own. I guess you mean critics of bigotry? While doubling down on her own. She tweeted, "Bigots loathe the idea of black and brown people, queer people, non-cis dude people. Any intersection of the above apply for this job. They extra, they extra despise that I, an Afro-Puerto Rican, trans, non-binary, with all due respect, I'll never understand how someone is trans and non-binary when trans is a prefix and non-binary would mean that you're neither gender, but trans is a prefix applied to the two genders. I just don't understand it. But trans non-binary person that works in the industry, am encouraging the above to apply, she claimed. And here's where Vita, in my opinion, steps in it royally. Yeah, like I said, now she's gone from poking the bear to flat out whacking the bear with the stick. Right? She's gone from poking the hornet's nest to shaking the damn thing. This no, this was not a good look. Again, it is this needless antagonizing of the fans. I understand being upset at critique, especially if you're of the opinion that people are misunderstanding your intentions. But this type of response does not help anything. This is clearly, Vita is clearly lashing out in anger. And instead of actually trying to understand where her critics, or sorry, their critics, Vita's critics, instead of Vita trying to understand where Vita's critics are coming from, or understand why people are a bit sensitive to this, Vita again lashes out in anger and again promotes this idea that comics or comics fans are gatekeeping certain people out, which again is not the case, because if they were gatekeeping and trying to keep people like you out of the company, then how in the world did you get in the company, right? And then of course when one looks at the history of other creators or the history of Marvel and DC, you look at, for example, Milestone, right? The history of Milestone comics being comics that were for black people by black people, right? Anyone who knows their history knows that what's Vita saying here is not the case. And that's probably my biggest issue with this tweet, because while I have no issue with Vita reaching out to certain demographics and letting them know that, hey, this job is open, lashing out at the fans is never a good look. Even if the fans are mistaken, even if the fans are misunderstanding what you're doing. In my opinion, a good creator, one who's trying to foster positive interaction, would say, would again say, hey, I understand there's some criticism. I know that there's a section of fans who get very suspicious when they see certain things. Let me be clear. I'm just reaching out to people. This is not to say that other types of people can't apply. There was a way to soothe this over and assuage people's fears, whatever they may have been. Vita, sadly, does not try to do that. Vita does not try to engage in conflict resolution and try to uh, make people feel less scared, right? Or address whatever fears or concerns they have. Vita doubles down and accuses Vita's critics of being bigots, right? That if you disagree with her in any or with them in any way, you must be a bigot. No, Vita, this does not help anything. Calling other people bigots, but you have no proof of bigotry just because they disagree with or misunderstand something you're doing, which ideally is ultimately supposed to help Marvel, right? Ideally, it's supposed to help bring people on, right, who may be from a certain demographic, but who more importantly are talented and can help the company improve, right? So, this type of response does not assist in that goal, right? Telling people who are your critics that they're bigots and trying to read their collective minds and say that they despise that you are from these demographics and you're in the business is just a bad look all around. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't help your outreach efforts. It doesn't help Marvel. It certainly doesn't make Marvel look good. It certainly doesn't engender anyone to Vita. Right? If anybody was on the fence about Vita, they might be on the negative side of the fence now. And anyone who already didn't like Vita is going to dislike Vita more. This is one of those things where there is zero sum. Nothing is gained from this. In fact, there is loss. Right? It is a net loss. This tweet does not help anything in any way. And that's all I gotta say about it. That and the fact that, interestingly enough, I think a while back Vita blocked me, although I don't think I ever tweeted at Vita. But I remember checking on Twitter just, I guess out of curiosity because I had done my Nubia and the Amazons review and I found out Vita had blocked me. So I guess it's one of those things where it's like, well, if she'll block someone she hasn't even interacted with, can I should I be surprised that Vita would put out a tweet like this that only antagonizes people and doesn't do anything else, and certainly doesn't do anything remotely positive. So, in closing, I should say, while I am in favor of Vita reaching out to certain demographics and encouraging them to apply, I am certainly not in favor of them, of Vita, um, antagonizing critics, right? Shaking the hornet's nest. It's not a good thing to do. And that doesn't help, right? It doesn't help anything to do this, right? Same thing with, T. Franklin, right? T. Franklin likes to antagonize people, be an instigator. T did it to me, T's done it to others, and again, in the end, is that really going to get any more eyes on your comic? right? Is anybody reading this tweet? Is there any chance that um, uh, this type of tweet is going to bring any more readers to the Nubia and the Amazons comic or any other comic Vita is working on? In my opinion, probably not. And if you're not growing, well, then what the hell are you doing, right? But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day, night, wherever you are. Bye.